when you were going to gig after gig and you're
Yeah.
attending a wedding and maybe you had just gone on another date the night before that didn't work out, did that affect you in any way?
Well,
Assuming you're a human being?
This obviously happened hundreds of times, you know, between the gigs and the dates the night before and the hopeful date the night after, perhaps. I'll tell you the truth. A part of it felt very hard, but I really, really chose to not focus. You know, they always say, like, what's better, positive thinking or not negative thinking? And it shows in studies that not negative thinking actually gets people further than just being optimistic, like avoiding. And for me, it was like not negative thinking. So every time I got up in front of a chazan kala, and I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, this is such a lie, but it's not. I really felt their simcha. I looked at them. I looked at the chazan's face. I looked at the kala's face. I'd see the tears. I'd see the joy. And I'd just be like, I'm so happy for them. And me, like, it'll come when it comes. It's not a contradiction. You know, I remember I set up my sister with her shidduch. I kind of made her shidduch. And so I was making all the phone calls, I was doing all the research, and my father sent me like a long message, like how proud he was of me for putting my feelings aside. And I'm like, Abba, I gotta be honest with you. I don't know. It doesn't, I never registered it that way. The hard part was not the gigs. It was the personal life. It's after the gig when you come home and you're alone again. And tomorrow morning, you're going to wake up alone again. And that can be and is debilitating for me personally. It really, really, if people look, like a lot of people ask me like, Yoni, why haven't you put out music in the last while, like new music? And I'm like, I knew that if I just keep going at this rate, I'm just going to burn out, and I needed to focus on getting married and honing in on that. So now there's a lot of music that's going to be coming out, Be'ez Hashem, but I had to take a break from everything to clear my mind and create these pathways in order for this to happen. Because, you know, people, when you're single, there is so much pain, and people, and that's one thing that Ashley and I, we promised each other and ourselves that, like, we'll never forget that pain that our friends have gone through, are going through, and that people, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, will go through in the future, because shidduchim is a very complicated process. I think that, you know, there's a lot of judgment passed on single people, particularly at a certain age. Like, one of the things, and I'm sure you've experienced this with other people as well, is people think that after 30, like, people become less religious. Like, and it's like, and people thought it about me too. And it's like, I didn't become less religious. It's simply like, when people don't realize, when you don't have a community, when you're not yet married, you don't have a husband, you don't have a wife, you don't have someone to go to Megillah reading with, you don't have someone to do, you know, the smallest, I don't want to say smallest mitzvahs, but like those things like Megillah reading, or like things like
family things,
making
right?
making sure to eat in the sukkah, you know. And there's a part of you that I think that it's very important. I really want to say this, that people should not judge single people for seeming to be less from. It's just that there's a part of their psychology that's going, I want to do it, but I want to do it with someone. And you almost don't want to do certain things because you don't want to do it alone.
Right.
And I think that people miss that very often. And they go, you know, they'll say about guys and girls, like, you know, she went to SEM, she was here, she was there, but now she's chilled out a bit. And it's meant to be offensive, but
instead,
like,
invite her over, invite her for Shabbos, invite her to your house.
Yeah, do things like that. Don't, you know, like, create moments that they feel, that they do feel a sense of family and community. For me, a huge turning point was moving to the city and becoming the chazan at the shul, because girls used to tell me all the time, like, do you have a rav? Do you have a community? And I was like, no. And they're like, why not? And I'm like, because when you're single, you just wear who, what, like,
you don't have community.
You don't have a community. I think that's something that people overlook so much about single people. Like, oh, you don't take yourself seriously enough. You know, the guy doesn't wake up for shul on Shabbos. She, you know, she doesn't take, you know, if she missed lighting Shabbos candles, like, you know, she doesn't really care. And it's like, it's hard to light Shabbos candles every week and just be like, when am I going to do this for 2 people? It's hard to go to Minyan in the morning on Shabbos and be like, when am I going to do this knowing I'm coming home to Seuda with my family? And just people have to really ease up on the judgment that single people face, especially people who, with all due respect, if you didn't experience it and you got married in your early 20s, and I hope you did, and it's brutal.
It's so brutal.
It's brutal. And people just have to be kinder to single people and stop judging them so much, because
Instead, help them. That's what I think is more nice.
Just be there for them, you know? And the more of a support system you are to single people, the higher chances there'll be that they'll be like, you know what? Like for Ashley, for example, Ashley told me when she went to LA, she didn't really have friends because her friends were all in Israel. She was there for 7 years. So Ashley was hanging out with families. But then Ashley...
Yeah, every Shabbos, it was a different family. So I was...
and it's hard...
They were adopting me, but they were also like thinking, like, who can we set you up with? And you didn't feel alone. Like you felt included. You felt... You also learn from these families, like, what is it that I want in my house for when I get married? You know, so it really helps you to have this sense of calmness despite like not having the other person.
It feels so welcoming to have someone welcome you into their home.
And I think that was the most beautiful thing. And I really encourage others to do it. And I think that's something we also want to do because
we already started.
Yeah, like it's very beautiful, and we're all about hospitality.
I wanted to see how much, like, I'm a little crazy. Everyone knows that my life. And I kind of put Ashley up to the test. And 2 weeks after we met,
it was your birthday.
It was my birthday, and I hosted an oneg for like 70 people.
Wow.
And Ashley just got on board, and she's like, all right, I need to go to bingo. I need to buy this. I need to buy that. I need to buy that. And I'm like, she can keep up with my kind of crazy.
She's a rock star.
We're trying. Well, because you remember what people did for you. And I think it's important to always remember that and to give it back as well, right?
You know, it's the crazy thing is that at that oneg, I got up there. Now, mind you, the oneg was called for like 10 p.m. So we all finished our meals. And then we came to my apartment where I hosted it. And Ashley was running the kitchen like she was already my wife. God bless her in the best way. She's such a rock star. And I got up and I made an announcement because I just felt like, why not bring some Kedusha into the room? And I said, if anyone didn't yet hear Kiddush, I appointed someone to make Kiddush. And then I said, if anyone didn't yet wash, we got a bunch of challah rolls in the kitchen, just go, right? And if I tell you the amount of people that got up to go wash, and not because they're not from, because they didn't have a meal. They didn't have it. The amount of people that got up to hear Kiddush and were like, shh, I need to hear, I didn't hear yet. And it's 10 p.m. on a Friday night. And that's not a sign of lack of frumkeit. That's pure pain and loneliness. So to all you married people out there,
open your door, grab a seat, and invite someone single.
There's also so much about Jewish practice that's family and community centric. So if someone is by themselves for Shabbos, or even with a couple friends, and they're doing something that symbolically is done by a family or done with a spouse. And
what is that to you,
and for example, Friday night Kiddush, if there's a bunch of women together, they may, making Kiddush is simply highlighting, and if you're a feminist, I'm sorry, girl, I'm sorry, but it's simply highlighting this is unnatural. There isn't a man in our life.
It doesn't feel
ordinary. There isn't a man here.
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel good. And that's every week. That's every Chag. So you may just be like, oh, let's just skip it. Washing, doing the hamotzi again. Usually it's the male in the household. It's fine, guys. We'll just have the food. There's a lot of things that, and maybe for a man, it might be going to shul if most of the people around him are, rushing in and they're sharing how they just dropped off their kid, or they have to do groceries. There's just so many elements to Jewish lifestyles that can highlight what you don't have, that in an attempt to cope and be okay. We're not even talking about like thriving, just be okay.
Right.
You feel like you need to separate from the things that are supposed to bring you closer to the community that you don't have. And if there's anything you want to share about this category that can eliminate judgment, that can provide comfort and validation, and maybe some that feel so much shame and grief while trying to navigate this chapter, don't hold back, because It needs to be heard.
I'll tell you just off the bat, Erev second days of Pesach just now, Ashley and I finished. We went to Palm Beach to PGA, to the program with Costa Rica, and those were our final days together before our week break started before the wedding.
I love the drama.
Yeah, so no, it was actually the best way to end.
No, in the best way.
Yeah.
Like it's
Just
not
a lot
simple,
of food, but amazing.
No, Baruch Hashem. And right before Yom Tov, I was with Ashley. We were downstairs just like watching people swim and families. And I said, Ashley, I have to type a message on my stories. And I wrote a message and I wrote, if you're single and Yom Tov is coming and it's hard for you, know that I'm thinking of you, that we're thinking of you. And I signed off Yoni and Ashley, and that, don't give up hope. 6 months ago on Sukkot, I was feeling that void and that pain really deeply. And 6 months later, I'm a week away from my wedding. So Hashem works in the craziest ways. I have never, so when you post a story, now people can heart a story.
Yeah.
I have never gotten on any story ever, including our engagement, so many hearts. And my DMs just started ping, ping, ping. Thank you. I needed to hear that. Thank you. I needed to hear that. And that was from boys, girls, divorced moms, divorced dads. And yeah, like I'm saying, it's not just single. It's like also for divorced people. Like, if we claim to be, and Baruch Hashem we are, if we claim to be a community that leaves no one behind, and we're there for Pidyon Shuyim, and we're there for, Bikur Cholim, and we have Hatzalah, and we have Shomrim. I mean, we got our bases covered. Then where are we for the single people that are literally like, most of them, I would say 99% are like, I want to be closer to Hashem. But like you said, when you're living in a community that everything is so community-centric.
Or family lives somewhere else, or not in the same community.
Or you live out of town from your family.
Or some families are divorced. There are so many different things, and that there should all be taken into consideration. Also with the hug, there's so many, it's not just one meal, 2, 3,
or
4.
It could be 4, 6.
I mean, can you imagine you go to one meal and then all of a sudden you're lonely for the rest of the meals? Like, it's very hard.
Organizing meals on Yom Tov, I think, is one of the biggest dreads that single people face, because it's not like, Shabbos, you're like, all right, I'll get invited to a friend Friday night. Shabbos day, I'll sleep in, maybe eat a kiddush, and then just go chill. And then suddenly you have a 3-day Yom Tov. And it's just like, where do I even start? And there's a certain, not shame, but like an uncomfortable thing that you have to text people. Hi, I hope I'm not intruding. But I
do it all the time. I had to reach out to people and tell them, hi, by any chance, do you have a meal open? Oh, of course not. There's some people who would do it, and there's other people's that
and some people suffer in silence. And that's the saddest part. And that's when you hear like people are like, oh, do they keep Shabbos? And it's like, people say things like, I think they keep it, like they watch Netflix on Shabbos. And it's like, that's a common thing that I think is like, I've been hearing over the last decade.
I've been hearing it a lot also.
And people, like, again, you have to keep Shabbos. There is no excuse under the sun not to keep Shabbos. That is what Hashem wants from us. But if someone who is has come to the point where they're watching Netflix on Friday night, can you imagine the level of distraction that they need to cause themselves and bring themselves to, that they made that choice? Because a lot of people that like who are from birth or not from birth, but like, the weight of Shabbos, that picking up your phone on Shabbos is a big no-no. So instead of judging them and saying, I think she low-key watches Netflix, on Shabbos, or turns on the TV before Shabbos or whatever it is. It's like, just imagine the amount of distraction that you need to put yourself through just to get through that Shabbos or that Yom Tov or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, eventually you come to the sense and you start making different life decisions, right? You start saying, okay, I'm going to surround myself with just families. I noticed myself, like when I started to hang out.
That was very brave of you, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it was not easy. I went from being in Tel Aviv where everyone's single to going to Pico Robertson and now hanging out with only families. But the moment I started to do that, it really allowed me to grow and to really reach out to families that sometimes most of them would tell me, oh, I didn't know you didn't have a meal. Like, I'm so happy you reached out to me. So I think it's also like, as a single person, you have to network and you have to be bold and ask someone, hey, do you have this? Can I come join you for Shabbos? Can I come join you for a little bit, for an hour, You
are very brave. Think about someone who goes to a restaurant and the waiter brings them the wrong drink and they're like, I don't want to tell him. And now you have to reach out to someone, and by default, you're admitting, I don't have a place to go.
Right.
Can you host me? Think of all the insecurities and fears and things that come up. And again, every week. Not once a
Correct.
year,
Correct.
every week. You are very brave.
Or we all have to push ourselves, you know? So I understand the pain. And I think many people think that we share our stories and you're seeing like that, well, they got married, but there's so many things behind the scenes that people don't know. But because of that, we share it because there is pain. And like Yoni said, many people don't talk about it. I think it's important to talk about it, not to brag, just saying, it is painful. We're here with you. Now let's help each other. How can we help one another?
Yeah. And it's Sunday night now, whenever this episode is released. It's 8 p.m. Maybe it's 8:35 right now. And Shabbos is coming this week too. So if you're in a position where you can host, please pause this episode. Think of someone who probably doesn't have a place, or think of someone that comes to mind. And if that's the person that comes to your mind, maybe God's telling you they need a place. And don't assume they have plans. Don't assume if they want to, they'll reach out. Take advantage of this opportunity to enhance someone's life by welcoming them into yours and pausing this episode and inviting them.